Welcome, everyone, to Authenticity with Alicia, the podcast where we explore burnout, the pressures of society, and our quest for identity and authenticity. I'm Alicia, and today we are joined by Audrey Schoen. We were just talking about pronunciation, and so of course I got it confused on which one I was going to say. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist based out in California. She does all sorts of work. She works with individuals and couples, helping them feel connected. She specializes in spouses of law enforcement officers, and she also works with folks who are anxious overachievers and burnout in general. So, some of my favorite topics. She's also a business coach for other therapists to help them find balance and fight burnout. So, we got stuff to talk about today. So,
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you so much, Audrey, for taking time out of your day and talking with me.
Thanks for having me. I'm just excited to be here.
I'm a big fan, so I'm kind of fangirling because Audrey runs an amazing Facebook group. I've gotten the privilege of working on like a couple projects with her throughout the few years, but she promotes just wonderful things about balance
Oh,
and like realistic like ways, but also like we're gonna tackle some of these like really big things as well. So just you do amazing work, and I'm just
thank you.
fangirling right here.
Oh my
So
gosh. It's still like kind of weird to me that people like fan me because it's
yes.
like, oh my gosh, that's right. I just like, I do that. Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yes. Like you do amazing work. You help other folks. And we're both in like the therapist entrepreneur world, but like you
Yeah.
also just have the therapy life outside of working with therapists and just like other
Hmm.
things you do. So no, just big fan.
Yay.
So one of the things that we both kind of overlap in that I'm curious in is balance. That's,
Yes.
the main of one of the main messages in your Facebook group, something that you're
Hmm.
really, empower folks to do. I also know it's kind of a controversial word in the
Hmm.
therapy world,
Yes,
especially of late, because these conversations are starting to be had, which is wonderful. But now, people can fight over the words that we use. So, how do
absolutely.
you define balance?
Yeah. So for me, balance connects very strongly to a word, equanimity. And I've always loved that word. But it essentially means the ability to ride the waves
Hmm.
um, with stability. And so for me, balance isn't about some point that you achieve,
Hmm.
it's about the ability to ride the waves, the
Hmm.
ebbs and the flows of life, and have like buffers built in and things built in that help you stay sort of like within the lines
Yeah.
of sanity
Yes.
as you're navigating like the ebbs and the flows and the things that come your way and the unexpected and the unknown
Yeah.
and unknowable of life.
I love that. I can totally like that's similar to how I view it. I mean, I don't
Hmm.
still use those exact words, but it is. I think it's, especially as overachiever as well. I'm like, I'm
Yep.
gonna achieve balance
Oh my
someday,
gosh.
right? And I'm
Yes.
gonna do all the
Yes.
things, I'm gonna do it perfectly, and everything's gonna be in line. It's like, no, 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 that's not
Nope.
stable, actually. And it's a
Yep.
journey and it ebbs and it flows. And to me, that's what balance is about too, is there's gonna be
Hmm.
times where we kind of have to lean into some of these unexpected things, but if we
Hmm.
stay over here for too long too, like that's not really stable either. And so leaning back
Right.
and doing all the things. So cool. On the same page there. And so when in your own journey or when you work with other folks, like how do you help them find some of that balance? Because it's so much easier said than done.
Oh, so much easier said than done. Yeah. I mean, it's there's a level of sort of like, what am I working with, right? So
Mm.
when I'm thinking about balance in my own life, I'm thinking about and I'm looking at what am I working with? Like my kids have to be dropped off at school at
Hmm.
a certain time. There's
Hmm.
a window of 20 minutes that I can drop my kids off, and there's a window where I can pick them up again.
Yep.
There's hard realities to each of our lives.
Yes.
And then there's what we expect of ourselves and whether that's reasonable or not,
Mm-hmm.
and what society expects of us, whether that's reasonable or not, and how we overlay those things. So I can put 20 things on my to-do list today. That doesn't mean I'm actually going to have time to do them all. And if
Yeah.
I'm not realistic with myself about what I can fit in a day,
Hmm.
I'm always going to feel like I'm out of balance. So part of it is it's a reality check.
Hmm.
Like, what can I reasonably expect of myself based on my current life circumstances?
Love it.
And if that's not working for me, what do I need to change that is changeable
Mm.
about my life in
Mm.
order to achieve a balanced approach with buffer? The buffer
Yeah.
is important.
Yes.
That can feel balanced most of the time. Like I was just telling you this morning, our school's power was out, so kids aren't in school today, and
Hmm.
so one of my ways that I say achieve, we don't achieve balance. One of the ways that I maintain balance in my
Mhm.
life is that I don't schedule anything before 10 or 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
I do my workouts in the morning, I do admin in the morning. But what it allows is on a day like today, when my kids are out of school unexpectedly, I don't have an 8 o'clock meeting I'm rushing to get to
Yes.
right after I drop them
Yes.
off. So I have buffer time every single morning
Oh.
to figure out a game plan if something
Mhm.
changes. And it
Mhm.
doesn't disrupt my whole day.
I
It's
love that.
frustrating, but it's not super disruptive.
Right. Like it's a hiccup. Like still,
Yeah.
maybe you have to rearrange some things, maybe miss something, do like
Yep.
all
I
those
might miss
feelings
my
are
workout.
valid. Right.
Okay.
But the important things of like, okay, well, like, are my kids going to be taken care of? Am I going to be able to see these clients at a certain
Mm-hmm.
time so I can get some income or do these other
Mm-hmm.
tasks for my job? Like those core things are going to be taken care of.
They're accounted for.
Yeah, because of
Exactly.
this buffer. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that just like almost doing like an assessment of like, okay, what are we working with? What are maybe like the non-negotiables, the things that have to be done that we
Mm-hmm.
don't have a lot of control over? What do we maybe prioritize that are going to be really helpful for us? And what do
Mm-hmm.
we have some flexibility that we can maybe move
Yes.
around? And if we don't have a lot of that, what do we need to then change to be able to work towards that? I think
Exactly.
that's genius. Yeah. And oh, so you mentioned a couple, nuggets that I want to dive into, but one of them was like this cultural expectation. I know
Oh.
that's something that you've talking about before. So
Mm-hmm.
what are some of those cultural expectations that can make it difficult?
Oh gosh. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is super mom, right?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
supposed to work like I don't have kids and parent like I don't have a job, right? Like
Yeah.
something along those lines. And being the primary contact point for my kids, my schedule is often the first to be disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can get, especially getting into public school this year. This is our first year in public school, and the PTA reminders and the events at the school and the things I'm supposed to donate and the stuff I'm supposed to sign up for and the volunteer sheets that I'm supposed to like put my name on. And I just kind of had a moment at the beginning of the school year where I felt incredibly overwhelmed by all of it.
Yeah.
And then after a little while, I kind of gave myself permission to not engage. Like
Mhm.
if my kids told me that something was important to them, I paid attention.
Yeah.
And I looked for ways that I could put this stuff into my world really easily. But I'm also not stressing myself out about trying to do all of the things
Yes.
because
Yes.
it's just too much to do
Yeah.
that and run two businesses and also like continue to do other things in my life that I want to do.
Right. These other
So
identities that you have.
yeah, so I'm always checking in with myself about like, am I okay with the current
Mm.
level of involvement I have with the school?
Yeah.
And am I still good with that?
Yeah. Oh,
Yes, great.
that's yes, I love that. That's super mom. And like that's thrown around as like a compliment in a way. I mean,
Mm,
like
I
it's just,
know.
oh my gosh, you do all the things. How do you do it? You're the super woman, you're a super mom. And it's like, yes, I appreciate, I don't have kids, so full disclosure, but I work with a lot of parents. And it's just like, yes, like, I can appreciate like the work and the effort and like, I'm
Mhm.
glad that you're getting that appreciation. But like, let's take some of the load off. Like, let's
Yeah,
challenge some of these expectations. Like,
yeah,
are you actually doing all the things? Or are you doing the things that society is deeming important and actually losing yourself and not having time to nurture relationships or
yes.
hobbies or joy? Like, are you rewarding those things? Or nope, you're just really
Mhm,
active and whatever, and you have a clean house and your kids and all the great
mhm.
things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, cleaning. Like, I have had a cleaner coming because we don't right now. We're in transition, but and I will have her back. I miss her dearly. But like that's one of the first things that I started paying someone else to do was to clean my house because I recognized that like the time spent there was worth the
Yeah.
money that I was spending to have somebody else do it.
Yep.
And so looking at where that's that piece of balance is like, where can I outsource?
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm happy with the cleanliness of my home.
Yep.
I don't care if my friends come over and it's messy because my kids are playing because who
Or
freaking
you
cares?
have a lived-in house.
I have a lived in house, right? And so like I can be happy with it and that's enough.
Right.
That's enough.
Yep. I love too, just like where like those lines are for you of like you're
Yeah.
not trying to have, this maybe Better Home and Gardens looking thing, white glove everywhere. But it's like, okay, like I've got kids. I want it to be hygienic and clean and safe
Mhm,
for those things. But if it looks lived in, if it looks like my kids have been playing, like if
mm,
my friends come over, that's okay. And if they're gonna judge that, that says more about them,
mm.
honestly.
Yeah, if
And
you're gonna judge my house because I didn't clean it the way that you would, like, peace.
yeah, that was a game changer for me because I used to be the like, oh my gosh, I need to have the perfect house. And then when like I think my therapist was like, what would
I
they say? And I'm like, well, nothing. My friends are nice people. Like I don't hang out with people who are gonna judge me if I have a messy house. Why do I care? And I was like,
Yep,
I don't anymore.
yep, exactly.
And for the things that maybe we don't like to do or take up a lot of time, it's now, okay, well, can I or outsource? I don't enjoy
Mhm,
this cleaning if I'd rather be spending time with my family or putting this
mhm.
energy into my business. Is this worth it? And it sounds like for you it
Yes,
is. Heck yeah.
yes, yes.
I love that. So then you mentioned the other good nugget that I wanted to dive into was like this buffer that you created. I know something that you also talk a lot about is finding joy and playtime as
Mhm,
an adult. So
mhm.
is that included in the buffer, or can you tell me a little bit more about what
It's a
you mean
little
by that?
both.
Okay.
Yeah, it if it matters, put it on your schedule, right?
Mm.
So, if it matters to me, it lives on my calendar, but literally I have a color-coded Google Calendar that syncs to everything and I move things around. It's dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
hence the balance, the motion in
Yep.
motion. But um if it matters, I put it there, right? And if it doesn't get on my calendar, then it tells me something about how much that matters to me right now,
Mm.
or like if it keeps getting bumped, but it does matter to me, then I need to reckon with that somehow.
Yeah.
So things like swing dancing. I swing dance. I love swing dancing. I've been
So
doing it since I was a
cool.
teenager. And it's hard to do right now because of my 5-year-olds. And
Oh.
it's on Friday nights. And that's a really hard time to get out at bedtime. It's a
Mm-hmm.
hard time for me to leave the house right now. So I put it on my calendar weeks to months in advance. I set aside those Friday nights and I say, these are the nights that make the most sense to me
Yeah.
based on the rest of the things I have going on for me to be
Mm-hmm.
able to leave the house. And so I put it on my calendar months in advance. I
Mm-hmm.
let my husband know in advance, like, I'm planning on doing this, be prepared.
Uh-huh.
And so I like set it up so that that playtime for me is set aside.
Yes.
The other piece, buffer time, that is for me is the hour between when I stop working and when I pick my kids up.
Ooh.
I try to give myself about an hour. It doesn't always work, but I schedule an hour in.
Yeah.
If I noticed that if I work all the way up into the point where I either have to leave to get my kids or they're coming in the door,
Mhm.
I feel irritable, I feel anxious, I
Mm.
feel
Mhm.
on edge, I don't feel
Mhm.
complete.
Yeah.
My brain hasn't had a chance to sort of tie up the day.
Yep.
So I give myself a full hour. That way, if I need a little extra time to tie myself up at the end of the day, get myself sort of organized for later and let work go,
Mhm.
I have some buffer zone for that. And then I can watch an episode of my latest like binge show, or which I never
Yes.
get to do. I can
Mhm.
listen to a podcast or a book. I have time to maybe actually cook a nice meal for
Mm.
the family and
Mhm.
enjoy cooking because I'm not being interrupted every like
Yes.
30 seconds.
Right.
But I get to choose how I spend that time.
Yes.
And it also serves as a buffer. Like if for some reason stuff hits the fan and I have to take care of some things for work, I have room to do
Mhm.
that,
And it's not
right?
impacting, oh, well, now my kids are here and they're needing my attention, or I have these
And I'm
other
trying to
roles and
work.
responsibilities, but then this is also, and now I'm frustrated,
Hmm.
annoyed, potentially irritable, and
Hmm.
that's not fun for anyone.
No, it's awful. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so I hear, so there's this playfulness. So, yes, if it's important, schedule it. Love that. Swing dancing, never done. Like,
So fun.
amazing. And planning for it. And like, and because I think that's so important for folks, because I think, especially for women, we don't get to really prioritize that.
Mm-mm.
We feel a lot of guilt, we feel shame. It's one of those first things where, well, if something comes up, well, then we'll drop the playfulness thing,
Yep.
and I have to do these other things. So I think put it on the calendar, adjust if needed once in a while, but like really like try to make that a really intentional space. But also like sometimes a buffer isn't always sexy or fun. Like you
Nope.
said, like, hey, there's an hour and maybe I'm watching TV. Maybe I'm just catching up on admin stuff, but I know then when my family gets home, I can be present during that. And so it's
Yep.
just tuning into a what do you really need to be able to enjoy those things and transition your brain into whatever. Sometimes it's a binge watching show. I watch a lot of
Mm-hmm.
mindless like reality TV once in a while.
Yep.
Sometimes it's reading a good book, going for a walk, moving your body, cooking, like whatever
Mm-hmm.
that is. It doesn't have to be like a sexy fun thing, but it's just what do
No.
you really need in that moment?
You can like sit and stare blank at the wall for 20 minutes. Like that's
Yes.
fine.
In like my peak burnout phase, I literally would just like go lay on my kid in my living room floor in the sun, and like my cat
Yes.
would come over and is like, "Are you
Yes.
okay?" And I'm like, "No, I need 20 minutes in the sun to literally recharge." So,
Exactly.
like,
It's whatever you need. And that's the beauty of it is you get to pick.
yes. Oh my goodness. So you also, so we're talking about balance, finding this stuff. Do you see this impacted in relationships at all? Like how this balance or this trying to do it all or adding these like schedules ever conflict ever?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, coming back even to the swing dancing, right? My husband doesn't do it.
Hmm.
And Fridays could be a time for us to connect, especially if we
Mm,
got childcare. And
mhm.
so there is that piece of in the relationship, like I have to figure out how much of the space that I create for me is just for me and how much of the space I create for me is for me and my relationships.
Yeah.
And that's a hard one and one that your partner might always agree with your
Yeah.
decisions about that, right?
Yep.
And so it can lead to some really hard conversations about like this is what I need
Mhm.
for me and this is what I need for us. Like
Mhm.
how's that work for you?
Yeah.
Because
Oh
we got to
yeah.
make that
And
work.
yeah. And so not just are we figuring out balance for ourselves, which is already like a journey, and it's
Hmm.
not always easy. Now, when we add another person into the
Oh
mix, they
yeah.
have their own wants, needs, balances, perspective, experiences, and so
Hmm.
it's well, how do we know when to maybe prioritize our own for a little bit so we can, pour into those areas? How can we validate their needs and wants without getting
Yep.
lost in that? And
Hmm.
lots of conversations, it sounds like.
Yeah, and not easy ones because we,
No.
like, my husband and I have slightly different, like, balances to
Mhm.
that, or slightly different, like, levels of what we would value there, and so we don't always meet,
Right.
and there's some feelings about it sometimes.
Yeah. Or even
Yeah.
I'm thinking like my partner and I, we tend to be on the same page pretty much with our needs, but then
Hmm.
timing. So
Mm.
it's like when I want
Yeah.
like my alone time and I'm like, oh, I want to go like snuggle up with a good book. And they're like, no,
Yeah.
like I really want some like connection right now. And
Uh-huh.
like they did their alone time some other time. It's like, okay, so we have different expectations, different needs, and then the
Yes.
timing of all of it lining up.
Oh, yeah.
No
And then it
wonder like
gets
people fight.
add kids and then
Oh,
it
right.
really gets hard
Right. I'm
because
like, we
then
got
you're like okay, well we only have a certain amount of time without the kids around.
yeah.
So how are we going to use that time? And so like being able to use it for yourself as an individual
Mm-hmm.
starts to get really hard
Yep.
because the expectation is, well, the kids aren't around, this should be for us. It's like
Yeah.
not always.
Right. Do you feel like women have more like guilt or pressure to maybe like not have that me time and have it more of like it's either the
Yes.
kids or the relationship?
Absolutely, yes. And there's data to back that up.
Really?
Oh
Oh.
yeah. Oh, there's a great book called
Oh,
All the Rage. And
I'm here for it.
I caution anybody that's reading this book to be prepared to read it in very small doses. It is
Ooh.
very appropriately named.
Oh.
Most people I talk to, they're like, yeah, I could only read it in like 20-minute bouts because I was just it got my system so activated.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm here for because yeah, I
So
work with
good.
a lot of women who are experiencing this, and I love anything that with data that can drive it up. But okay, so like
Mhm.
just like full disclosure, like the 20 minutes, like it's named
It's a rough read.
appropriately.
Yeah. And it's not just about the cultural, but it's about how women actually do this to ourselves. So it calls us out too and like, hey, you're actually reinforcing these narratives. Maybe you should
Oh.
stop.
Is that
Yeah.
kind of one of like the patterns that you've mentioned of like this almost, I don't know, it was about like this weaponized incompetence. Was that the pattern that you were talking
Yes.
about? Does this book talk about that?
It does talk about that. Like,
Okay.
right. So there's the way that the patriarchal structure reinforces it with, especially with how men have been encultured or enculturated, whatever that word is. You know what I'm saying.
Yes.
To sort of become children in relationships. And I believe that that's a cultural problem. It's just
Hmm.
a It's not just an individual man problem. Like there is a
Right.
cultural issue there.
Hmm.
And that's where weaponizing competence comes in. But then what happens is, as women, we become gatekeepers. And especially as mothers, we end up mom gating, where because we've been the primary caretakers
Mm-hmm.
and we haven't allowed our spouse to make the mistakes and learn the hard way what
Mm-hmm.
it's like to parent and care for a child and change a
Hmm.
poopy diaper and things, um, we end up basically just doing it ourselves because it's faster to do it myself than to deal with him making a mistake or doing it wrong,
Yes.
right? And then deal with his complaints and the weaponized incompetence issues. And so like the the emotional labor of trying to hand the thing off becomes bigger than the task, but
Mm-hmm.
then it keeps us
It
stuck there.
enables that pattern.
It enables the pattern. So like we end up enabling the
Oh,
pattern by not dealing with the pattern issue because of the
oh,
emotional labor involved in it. And it's not easy. Like it creates a lot of fights. It causes
yeah.
problems and conflict, right? In
Yeah.
relationships when you start to try to change these patterns.
Hmm.
But if you don't, you're stuck.
Like the same thing, yeah. So like you're either like angry that the pattern's happening
Uh-huh.
or angry with the, which is valid, like the emotional
Totally.
load and the labor and the mental load, all that stuff. So it's like
Yes. Pick your
both
angry.
suck. Yeah, like both suck. Both options are not great.
Yes, pick your angry. And I
Ah,
like I've talked to clients about that, the moms that I work with, and I'm like, you gotta pick your anger, like
yes.
your frustration. For me, confronting it became more worth it.
Yes. And being like long term too. Like, yes, it's
Yes.
going to be draining and lots of discomfort and even good change is hard and takes
Yes.
a lot of a journey. But it's like, okay, is this going to have maybe a better end result where maybe someday I don't have to do as much of
Be
this
in
emotion?
charge.
Yes. And take some of this stuff
Yes.
truly off of the plate.
Exactly. Hmm.
That's so one of the things, and I don't know, this is maybe not like what you specifically talk about, but even that like weaponized incompetence, like they're like that's a charged word, and when you
Hmm.
talk with that with couples, like do you ever hear defensiveness from it? Because I know like a lot of the times, because again,
So,
it's like traditionally like it's like the
yeah.
men who play that, and it's very much like
Hmm.
our culture, enables all
Hmm.
that and teaches that. But do you ever get pushback on that word?
I'm careful about using that specifically, right?
Yeah.
I will confront the issue within
Mm.
couples work. I may
Mm-hmm.
use that if I have an individual female client. I may use it.
Mm-hmm.
I've had individual male clients where I've been able to use it. I've had enough rapport to use it.
Yeah.
Couples, it's a little harder, so there's a delicate balance there of introducing the concept.
Yeah.
But I think there's some great resources out there. There's an article that I've sent several people. It's called something along the lines of, I asked my husband to take over feeding the dog. This is how it's going. And
Ooh.
it's fabulous. But she basically talks about how, like, she said, you need to take over all the aspects of feeding the dog. And
Uh-huh.
then, like, at one point, he ran out of food. And the husband was like, where's the food? And she's like, you have to buy it. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize that was part of the deal.
Yes.
She's like, no, when I said all of it, I meant all
Mhm.
of it. Like,
Mhm.
I don't, this is not my job anymore, not
Yes.
any part of it. And so, like, she had to watch him like scramble at the last minute and figure things out. And there's still areas where she like keeps up with certain things
Yeah.
around the dog food. So she hasn't been able to totally let it go as of the writing of that article.
Oh.
But it's such a beautiful real life example
Mhm.
of how this stuff plays out sometimes
Yeah.
in couples.
Oh, I love that. And I like, because I hear that a lot too, where it's like, okay, like, and I don't know if there's research around this or in the book, the article
Hmm.
I'm gonna read all these things, but it's like, okay, like maybe in the guy's head, again, this is in traditional,
Totally. Yeah,
stereotypical,
for sure.
scenarios. But it's okay, the guy's thinking like, okay, well, you feed the dog. Like that doesn't sound like a super hard
Just put
task.
the
And so
food
in
in the
their head,
cup.
it truly is just like a 30-second maybe task. And I can see that perspective. And
Yes.
then maybe that other person who's maybe more of like the overfunctioner or kind of like doing all that mental load, then they're like,
Yeah.
monitoring how much food is in there and maybe
Yes.
setting up the auto shipments or going to the store or
Yes.
including that in a budget because my cat has really expensive food, so I have to budget
Right?
for that. And then all of a sudden, this one 30-second task is actually potentially five or more tasks that involve a lot
Yes.
more mental work. And I think
Well,
that's
and
that disconnect.
I don't remember where I found this. It might be in the book. I can't remember, but I remember reading something or learning something that said that stereotypically speaking, Men are often tasked with finite tasks,
Mm.
finite household chores, and
Mhm.
women tend to take on the ones that are ongoing. So
I've heard that one
monitoring
before
food
too.
stores,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So if you think even about the dog food
Mhm.
example, the monitoring how much food is there, setting up the auto ship, those are all very ongoing monitoring tasks.
Yep.
Whereas putting the food in the bowl is a finite task. And
Mhm.
so there's somehow our culture has been encoded to separate these things out this way, but it puts so much mental labor
Yeah.
on the one monitoring everything
Mhm.
that I don't think is felt by the other partner until they're forced to take it over
Yep.
fully
Yep. And
without bailing out.
mhm. And I'm just already seeing how like this can play into couples then, because then like, the person who's
Yes.
taking on that mental load is like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted, I'm tired. And the other person's like, what do you mean you're not doing
I don't
anything?
understand.
I'm feeding the dog.
Just let me know what you need. It's like, cool. So now I'm your manager.
Yes.
No
Ooh, manager.
thanks.
I've heard that one said in couples a few times. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
oh my goodness. I think that's great. I think some of those good resources. I'm gonna look up that article, and then that book, All the Rage. So folks, but yeah, limit yourself, listen to your body, listen to the needs. The other thing that I wanted to just quickly touch on, and you've mentioned this, you've used this word for yourself before, but you've said like this
Mhm.
50% mom.
Yes.
And we're talking about all these different roles and balance and all that stuff. What does that mean?
So, the short answer is it means that I'm a better mom when my kids are with somebody else half of the time.
Hmm.
um, the longer answer is I went into motherhood expecting to love it. Like
Yeah.
I went into motherhood expecting to be a lot more like my mom
Hmm.
and wanting to spend most of my time with my kids. Now,
Yeah.
I ended up having twins, which was not what I expected.
Yeah.
And it was a lot harder than I could have imagined. Like I
Yeah.
knew it was going to be hard, but it was way harder than I could
Yeah.
imagine. And the level of um, mental fracturing that is experienced in the early days of motherhood, particularly with twins, because of the intensity,
Yeah.
is severe. And I very quickly realized that like I'm not built to be a mom most of the time kind of
Yeah.
person. I'm not going to be the mom that's home with my kids 90% of the time and has a little hobby business on the side.
Hmm.
That's not going to be me.
Hmm.
It only took me about 4 months to figure that out. And I had to get really okay with it really quickly because I also didn't want to feel guilty about it. I think that
Yes.
was the other piece of it is like I knew that I needed it and I
Mhm.
didn't want to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
So I had to reckon very quickly with how do I allow myself to be okay with this?
Mhm.
And what I realized in allowing my children to develop relationships with other people is that they actually like got more love
Mm.
that way.
Mhm.
Both of their grandmas get to spend lots of time with them.
Mm.
Even our nanny for a couple of years, she like adored them. They adored her.
Yeah.
They just got more love.
Yeah.
And so I got like even at their preschool, they got so much love at their
Mm.
preschool, even, right?
Mhm.
And so it made me feel like I was able to say, I don't need to feel guilty about this one because I'm a
Yes.
better mother
Yeah.
when I am with them.
Mhm.
And there's so many incredible people in their lives that they can
Oh,
turn to and depend on.
yes.
So it just like for me that made it okay.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
what like a powerful like reframe, because I think so many women who are maybe listening are have had some of those similar juggles of, does this mean that I don't love my kids? Does this mean I'm
Mhm.
selfish? Does any of this awful negative self-talk that we're
Mhm.
sharing? And when
Mhm.
it's like the root of it is like you want your kids to feel loved and cared for.
Yes.
And and I see that even just like seeing you talk about it, it's just like they and they can get that from other people, and that doesn't
Yeah.
threaten you and your relationship. Like, there's these
Yep.
other incredible humans out there who are gonna love on these kids, and,
Mhm.
like, that's incredible. Oh, that gave
Yeah.
me chills too, because like, my mom had me really young, and so she used a village. And so
Mhm.
I think I can just, like, imagine her, hearing this and being like, "Yes," like, she would want me to feel love from my grandparents, my aunts, my
Mhm.
uncles, all these people who I have these incredible relationships with now, and
Yep.
she's, still, like, my favorite human ever, and
We're
so
We're supposed to do it that way. And I know a lot of us don't have access to our villages
Yeah.
for lots of different reasons, lots and lots of different reasons. But we are meant to parent in villages. And there's a cliche term, it takes a village, but like another book for you, Hunt, Gather, Parent.
Oh,
It demonstrates just how real this is supposed to be how it works.
yeah.
We're not supposed to do this alone.
No.
That's why it's so hard.
Yes. And like
We're just not
modern,
supposed to.
no. And like thinking about like historically, there's been these villages, these
Hmm.
communities, and the
Hmm.
support with one another. And now I'm thinking about modern families and modern women, where it's like not only are we more isolated, but we're adding additional things as well. So we're expected
Yes.
to work full time and then raise our kids full time
Yep.
and do all these things. And yeah, like, well, why can't we do it all? Why doesn't it feel good? Because we were never meant to do all this all the time by ourselves.
Never meant to do this like this. No.
Like, no doubt we're having anxiety, depression, burnout, all these insecurities. Like, check, check, check. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And creating a village if you don't have one is hard.
Mhm.
And so, of course, it's like, of course, this is harder.
Yeah.
But I think it can alleviate some of the guilt and some of like the even shame that comes
Yeah.
up if you're a mom and you know that like I need more breaks than I'm getting
Yeah.
because biologically you actually do.
Yes.
This is not a made up thing. This is not a you
Mm.
thing. This is
Mm.
an everyone thing.
Yep. And just giving yourself that permission and like connecting to like that important thing of, you can still
Hmm.
be a good mom. You can love on your kids. You can do these things. It's okay to have breaks, giving yourself that
Yes.
permission. And that sounds like you're able to be a lot more present and intentional with your time when you're with them by
So
doing
much.
those other things. So it's
Hmm.
like that, we can't pour from an empty cup. Well, sure, you
Yes.
could probably, figure out life and be a full-time parent if that's what the cards had for you. Would that fill your cup as much? Would you get to be as present with them and experience these joyful moments?
Hmm.
Maybe we can't predict the future, but it sounds like that would be maybe a different level of balance and work in those situations.
Exactly. And like all of this requires checking in with yourself and saying what is working and what is not. And
Mhm.
can I be real? Can I give myself a reality check
Yeah.
about that and just confront it so that I can do something about it?
Yep. Yep. Oh, I think these are wonderful messages. I hope other folks, I can just like, I know that a lot of the women I work with have been through similar journeys with this stuff. So just,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm definitely going to read those books and those
they're so
articles.
good.
I love a good, I'm in like my reading era right now. So I like to do like a fun read and a professional read. And so one of the things that I like to end with is just asking how you have been practicing authenticity lately.
Mm, yeah, good question. Um, yeah, oh gosh, I know exactly what comes to mind. I'm not doing a very good job of it yet. This is something I am
Keyword
newly working on.
practicing.
Practicing, right? This is a new practice for me. And it's to be more disappointing.
Oh,
Yeah. And again, still really trying to figure out how this fits.
yep.
But it's this idea that it comes back to like the doing it all thing. I run two businesses. I have
Mhm,
two 5 year olds, one of which is known to be neurodivergent.
mhm.
Like and I try to still take time for myself. And so
Mhm,
there is so much on my plate and it takes me in a lot of different directions. And I tend to overperform and I
mhm.
tend to want to do everything the best possible way.
Yep.
And I worry about not getting something right or dropping the
Yeah,
ball or, missing an email or being late to something. And being disappointing to
yeah,
someone in some way.
yeah.
And working on figuring out how to give myself permission to be disappointing
Mm,
in the areas that I need to allow for things to be disappointing,
yeah.
that someone can expect something from me. And I might not be here for that.
Mhm.
Like, I just might not be.
Yeah.
And maybe that's okay,
Yes.
you know? So, yeah, like, and they can be disappointed. And I
Yep.
can be like, that's all right.
Yep, like they're allowed
That's
to be
okay.
disappointed, and that doesn't mean you did
Yeah.
anything wrong, right? Like
Yeah.
that power of and all that stuff. So, oh, that's a good one. That's gonna make my brain think because I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm on a journey with similar stuff,
Mm.
challenging that perfectionism stuff and not
Yep.
doing the people pleasing stuff. And it's hard because I think at the core of it, I don't want to speak for you, but for me, it comes from, I do care about these
Yeah.
people and about the work that I do, and I have those good
Hmm.
aspects. But anything at the extremes, like, am I sacrificing myself for this? Is
Yes.
this a dire thing? Like, is the world gonna stop if I don't do this? Like, Alicia, you're not that important.
Same. Same. All the same. All the same.
So, like, it's
Yeah.
a good thing. So, oh, yeah, my brain's gonna be thinking. Well, thank you so much for taking time and just talking about this stuff. It's important conversations. You do such important work. So thank you so much.
This was so great. I'm so happy I got to do this with you.
Yay. Oh, they stole my cup. Awesome. Well, folks, until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And remember that the world needs the real you. So let's explore that authenticity together.